And number 6 has f of x equals 2x squared minus 5. And the way you tell whether something is even, odd, or neither is you plug in a negative x for everywhere that's x. And you evaluate this side of the equation to see if it's the same or different than the original equation. So we write in 2, and then I have a negative x squared minus 5. Then I look at it and I say, well, negative x squared, I'm going to square that, so it's going to become positive. So I simplify this to 2x squared, and then minus 5. Then we compare what we started out with, our standard function, to the new function, and see, is each term the same or different? The first terms are the same. The second terms are also the same. So if both terms are the same, then that makes it even. It's like it's even on both sides. It's the same here on the on the regular x, and then even when I plug in a negative x, it's also still the same. So it's even. Really, that's really how it works. Is it's an even function. And graphically, we also know this because when we graph this, it goes down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the x squared is going to make it a parabola. And if you look at it graphically, I didn't draw it perfect, but if you were to draw it perfect, it's even on both sides of the x-axis. Thus, that makes it even. Now, for number 8, we have even, odd, or neither. And number 8 is an absolute value function. And it looks like a V. We've got it right here. Okay. So if you look at number 8 here, you'll notice that the graph is even on both sides of the x-axis, and that makes it an even function. You just look at it and say, hey, it's the same on both sides, and that's even. Whereas 9 is not the same on both sides of the x-axis, but I could rotate it 180 degrees. So that makes 9 odd. Number 10, it says determine the transformation for each function. And it is 410 f of x equals the square root of negative x minus 8. Now, for each of this is the a radical function, a square root function, and what you're going to do for these is evaluate them based on our standard y equals a absolute value of x. Actually, it's minus h plus k. And you've still got those same values, a, h, and k. Now again, when a here is negative, it would be a flip. This negative is inside. So when x is negative, inside, not outside your radical or your parentheses, but inside, that makes it flip over the y-axis. And you should have a list of all of these in your notes if you're taking notes. The negative 8 is not inside the radical, but it is outside the radical. So this is our k. This is our y-intercept. So it makes it move up and down. In this case, it's negative. So it's going to go down 8. And you need to study each of these. What makes A? A is the stretch and shrink. H is the left and right, but it does the opposite of what you would expect because it's inside. And then K makes it move up and down. The X only makes it flip over the y-axis, which means instead of it flipping down, it flips across the y-axis. So if X is negative inside, that's what that does. And it says to, you don't have to graph it, you just have to describe it. And you do have problems like this, where you look at the equation and then pick the correct transformation for that equation. Now 12, they do ask you to graph, and I'm going to sketch it. It says graph each function, and you have f of x equals the square root of x plus 1. Now, in this case, again, we've got our function here. This is our kind of our standard part of the function. The 1 is outside, so that's my k, and it makes it move up and down. That's my y. And then my parent function is the square root of x. Well, the square root of x would go over, it's like a parabola that got tipped over and only has half of it left. It's kind of like it got tipped over and you don't see the bottom part. And it's plus 1. So we go up 1, and then I also know that the first point is always up 1 and over 1. And then I just draw kind of a tipped over looking parabola, and it's only half of it. Okay, you won't have a bottom half because that would make a negative inside the radical, and we can't have a negative inside of the radical. Now the second part asks for the domain and the range. The domain, we look at it. Domain is all of the x values. So all of these positive x values from our function here, this is our function, all these values, x is going to be greater than or equal to 0. So all the values where x is greater than 0 are part of the domain. The range is all the values up here on the y-axis. So here it's y is greater than or equal to 1. And you've got to know how to graph it to find domain and range. You visually look at it and say, what are my x values? What are my y values that my particular graph demonstrates? Would have, all the points that are on the line that's on the graph. Now for 14, it says determine the transformation and of the function f of x. Okay, f of x equals 1 over 3x plus 6. So we look at this and we say, well, first of all, what's my parent function? My parent function was the one where we had y equals 1 over x. Then I say, okay, that's going to be the general shape, is 1 over x. That's the one where we had the, this is just the parent function, it's not the new one. And it's the one that goes really close to the x and the y axis, like this. Now, after that, we look at what's extra. I have a 3 here, and I have a 6. And where are they in the function? Our parent function that you need to know, or our basic, we have a over x minus h, and then plus k. Again, a does all the same things. If it's between 0 and 1, then it's going to be a shrink. If it's greater than 1, it's a stretch. If it's negative, it flips. H makes it move left and right. K makes it move up and down. So let's look at this. This 3 is part of my A. Now that A says it's on the front, on the top. So when A is on the bottom, that just means it's 1/3. So A is 1/3, so that means it's a shrink. Okay, by 1/3. Now this 6 is not in the denominator next to H, but it's out all lonesome by itself. That makes that the y-intercept, which makes it move up and down. So since I have a k equal to 6, it's going to move up 6. And that's what you'll need to pick is the correct transformation. This one is a shrink by 1/3, and it moves up 6 because of where the numbers are. You must memorize those. There's no easy way around that. It's just a simple matter of putting the time in to memorize what those functions do and what those numbers represent based on where they are.